Hello, class. My name is Cedric Evans, and I want to welcome y'all to my presentation for Chapter 2 in the Communication 622 course. The title of the chapter is The Changing Environment of Organizations. First of all, I want to start by telling you about globalization and businesses. Globalization is the internationalization of the business activities and the shift toward an integrated global economy. Next, we're going to talk about growth of international businesses. First, many forms of communications have improved over the years. There have been improved telephone services, fax machines, and things like satellites. There are five important environmental and five important environmental forces. First, there is globalization, diversity, technology, ethics and corporate governance, and employment relationships. Next, we'll talk about culture. Culture is defined as the set of shared values, often taken for granted, that help people in a group, organization, or society understand which actions are considered acceptable and which are deemed unacceptable. Next, we'll talk about specific cultural issues. First, we'll talk about individualism. Individualism exists to the extent that people in a culture define themselves primarily as individuals rather than as part of one or more group organizations. Next, we'll talk about collectivism. Collectivism is characterized by tight social frameworks in which people tend to base their identities on the group or organizations they belong. Next, we'll go over some key terms. First, we'll talk about power distance. Power distance is otherwise known as orientation to authority, which is the extent at which people accept as normal an unequal distribution of power. Then we'll talk about uncertainty avoidance. Uncertainty avoidance, also known as preference for stability, is the extent to which people feel threatened by unknown situations and prefer to be clear in an unambiguous situation. More key terms. Masculinity. Masculinity, which is also defined as assertiveness or materialism, is the extent to which the dominant values in society emphasizes aggressiveness and the acquisition of money and other possessions as opposed to concern for people, relationships among people, and quality of life. Now we'll talk about long-term values. Long-term values include focusing on the future, working on projects that have a distant payoff, persistence, and thrift. Next, we'll talk about short-term values. Short-term values are values that are more geared towards the past than the present and include respect for traditions and social obligations. That's short-term values. Differences. Differences among culture and managers is belief about answering questions from their subordinates. Some of the differences are expectations and precise answers. Workplace diversity. Workplace diversity is the important similarities and differences among the employees within the organizations. And then there are stereotypes. Stereotypes are generalizations about a person or group of persons based on certain characteristics or traits. Next, we'll talk about prejudice. Prejudices are defined as judgments about others that reinforce beliefs about superiority and inferiority. Dimensions of diversity. The primary dimensions of diversity are those factors that are either inborn or exert extraordinary influence of early socialization. Some of the factors are age, race, ethnicity, gender, physical and mental abilities, and sexual orientation. Next is secondary dimensions. Secondary dimensions of diversity include factors that matter to us as individuals and that to some extent define us to others, but they are less permanent than primary dimensions and they can be changed. And then there's assimilation. Assimilation is the process through which members of a minority group are socialized into learning the ways of a majority group. Valuing diversity. The term valuing diversity is defined as putting an end to the assimilation that everyone who is not a member of a dominant group must assimilate. Next, we'll talk about technology and business. Technology refers to the methods used to create products, including both physical goods and tangible services. Manufacturing is defined as a form of business that combines and transforms resources into tangible outcomes that are then sold to others. Service organization is one that transforms resources into intangible output and creates time and or place utility for its customers. Technology and competition. Technology is oftentimes the reason for competition for many places of business, especially in larger industries. Next, we'll talk about ethics. Ethics are a person's beliefs regarding what is right or wrong in a given situation. Therefore, managers of companies face a large variety of ethical situations. In many of these cases, the way organizations treat their workers, how the workers treat the organization, and how the organizations treat other economic agents are involved. Now we'll talk about corporate governance. Corporate governance refers to the oversight of a public corporation by its board of governors. Then there's knowledge of workers. Knowledge of workers are those employees who add value in an organization simply because of what they know. Then there's outsourcing. Outsourcing is the practice of hiring other firms to do work previously performed by the organization itself. When this work is moved overseas, it is called offshoring. A contingent worker is a person who works for an organization on something other than a permanent or full-time basis. A tiered workforce exists when one group of an organization's workforce has a contractual arrangement with the organization objectively different from another group performing the same jobs. Okay, this concludes my presentation on Chapter 2. Again, my name is Cedric Evans, and I hope you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.